Joshua Chisven, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Finally get to meet you. I've been hearing about you. We've same circles and old friends at PSR. So
I was gonna say it's a good place to meet right live on camera meeting, eh?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we've never actually run into each other in person. So
oddly enough, a lot of similar circles.
I think that Cameron, you want to just get the door? I think you do know Blair, though. You've talked to Blair in the past. I think he's probably trying to recruit you pretty hard back in the Blue Elephant days.
There was like a recruitment period in Blue Elephant, and then I think we just crossed paths. Being at PSR, we were across the street for a while, so it was just easy to bump into everybody on King Street back in the King Street heydays.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we've just kept in touch since. Somebody I really respect in the industry and the business. So
nice.
Always great to talk.
And I think we have. I think you and Blair have a mutual friend, Oren.
Yeah, probably too many. Yeah.
Awesome. How's King Street these days? It's been a while since I've.
King Street's different.
I got dragged out of there. My wife made me move uptown.
I was gonna say I don't know if I'm getting older or King Street's changing, but King Street's different, right?
I think we're getting older. Yeah. I lived there for 17 years, so I moved into King Street when Peter Freed got into development.
Was building it?
Actually, he did a little bit of low-rise before he did that.
Yep.
But 66 Portland was his first entry into condo development.
Yeah. No, that was kind of his, I think, like you said, he had other projects before, but his coming out to Toronto was King Street.
Yeah.
Developing all that.
Yeah, and did he ever down in King Street, like when we moved in there, it was like different neighborhood, like Krangle's Auto Body Shop is where the Thompson Hotel, or now, what's it called now?
The One?
The One?
Yeah.
The One is. I think that was just a big, huge junkyard, like cars piled up and...
Which is kind of like a lot of neighborhoods in Toronto before they were what they're now. Big, huge junkyards, right?
Yeah. It's just hard to believe that it's not that long ago that King Street, being one of the most prominent neighborhoods in Toronto, like in the country, it's probably one of the most liveliest neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And and Peter had a vision for it, and a few other great entrepreneurs in that area.
Yeah, and it's still growing. I mean, I think they're like filling in the gaps now, little spots between Spadina and Bathurst, between Bathurst and Dufferin. But yeah, it's an awesome neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember people used to say, Peter has developed King Street and it's done. Like it's still in its infancy. Like if you look at the Globe Mail site and Big King and
it's a lot of little pockets. I think coming out of the last few years, we're having a lot of like restaurant changeover and club and nightlife changeover. So it's really cool because we kind of went through that lull in the city in general, and now it's like King Street 2.0. All these new concepts coming out, which are awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in Vaughan. So the second I could get out of Vaughan and move right downtown, I did. That was my move. And then now I've kind of settled back like North Toronto, Midtown. Yeah, I'm in.
I know the answer to this, but what brought you back to Vaughan?
Well, now I'm like in the Avenue Lawrence area, right? I mean, what brought me north was
oh, sorry, I meant north.
Yeah, two things was more having a family, like that's an easy answer, and then getting into more of like a family-focused neighborhood. But I got too old, too tired, too burnt out. I'm not sure of the downtown nightlife. I think it's kind of like, when you grow up in the suburbs and you don't have access to it, you go down like eyes wide open.
Celebrate it.
Yeah, you go full out for those few years, and then you kind of settle out and find where you're at. And where right now, I think it's a good in between. It's like a suburb in Toronto, right? So nice. You get the access to the city.
We were just talking about this, but we both had little guys just prior to the shutdown.
Just before, 8 weeks before first lockdown. Yeah.
How's he adjusting, coming out and actually being able to see people?
The
first 2 years of both of them, like no interaction except.
We had a unique one. Like I think that's always a concern for every parent, right? Like, what's the impact on my kid going to be socially coming out of this? Yeah. Especially if there's no siblings. Like we only have one right now, so we had a little bit of a unique one. When he was 8 weeks old, we ended up moving up to the cottage. We're like, we'll go live there for 2-3 weeks, ride out this lockdown. 2.5 years later, we were making plans to go back to Toronto. But we have a lot of family and friends in the area. So my nieces and my son, they kind of lived under one roof for a long time. So he was socialized. And funny for us is like I guess with the kids, as they become a product of their environment, right?
For sure, yeah.
So in a normal world, their environment was daycare and kids and peers their age. He grew up with teenagers because my nieces are 10 and 12 years older than he is.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like, 4 going on 13. It's like really awesome, funny, but no, so he's socialized, he's awesome. It's great.
It's going to be interesting, down the road, not that this is a COVID shutdown podcast, but it's going to be interesting down the road to see the data come out on those kids and how they do and whatnot, right? Like
and again, not to go down that road, but I think it's a lot of the older kids. Like I talked to a lot of friends that have kids that were in grade school and high school, trying to get ready for university during that age, and that just kind of threw a huge curveball. Nobody knew how to adapt. Where I guess we're lucky enough we can remold them
So,
over the next,
again,
Yeah.
not to get into too much, but like, yeah, you got to think about that. Like, high school's hard enough for people, right? Teenage years,
Yeah.
adolescence, and then all of a sudden being locked away for 2 years, like, man.
Yeah, it was tough enough for like all of us, right? So remember those rebellion years where the last thing you want to do was be locked up with your family. To literally be locked up with your family is But no, yeah, it's I mean, to circle back, he's great. I think back to something we deal with every day with clients, figuring out where you want to live, where your lifestyle is, navigating that out of COVID with my son, with my wife, figuring out where we fit in Toronto was definitely an experience. But no, it's good, and love being a dad.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
Now.
challenging. It's a huge learning curve, and it's funny. We've been doing it for how many tens of thousands of years, and we still don't have a book on it. There's lots of books on it, but there's no manual, and it's just every day you're learning something, right?
It's always the cliche sayings that end up getting you, right? Like the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah,
Sometimes there are those days where you're just like, I got to get through it, but then you open, you're like, wow, he's 4. He's going to school next year, real school.
Slow down. So he was lucky during COVID. He had his older sister. She's 7 now.
Okay.
And he's 4, and just turned 4 in September. But at least he had his older sister during COVID, locked up at home. But he had her, but she's talking about the years are short. She's 7 going on 15.
Right.
And
I find it's funny. It's like we always have this. I have a talk with like some peers in the office about the generation, call it before us, or 10, 15 years younger than us, and like how we were when we were 20 and 25 and 30 and whatever, and how they are now. But then you actually bring it even further back to the kids, and with their access to social media, and my son, like I have an iPad at 4, and just the information that they have access to that they gain, like they're so, in a lot of areas, they're so much more developed than we were, and it's like they're going on teenage, and then in other areas, we're all helicopter parents, even if we don't want to be. We always have a tracker on everything that they're so much more immature than we were. It's a wild, both sides of the spectrum. Yeah.
So enough of COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
roll on.
It's so funny we talk about it so much, but you don't want to remember it.
Yeah.
Tell me about your where you grew up and your start in the world.
Yeah. So I grew up in like I said, in Vaughan. Kind of jumped around. We always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. Jumped around. Had a few businesses before I got into real estate that I sold out of or did not work out. Like every entrepreneur. Yeah. But I was young, and university just wasn't for me. I tried it, not to go on a whole rant, but the end of my university career was a house fire. So that was in a fire with my roommates, which
I'm sure that's a good story.
Oh, it's a good bar story, right? It's a great story. Definitely a whole other experience. We won't take over the podcast with that. But yeah, so then, wasn't doing much and wanted to figure out something that kind of fit my personality. And I'd done everything from like my car dealer's license to insurance and I was like, I'll get my real estate license and try it out. Got my real estate license. First transaction I did was to buy a house for myself and a buddy. And I kind of fell in love with the process. Like, I think everybody gets that high when you get that sale, right? I got that feeling, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Once I realized, like, okay, this is going to be my career, I'm going to build a business out of this, I went to George Brown to night school for residential home construction. Okay. I think there's a huge gap in our industry, which I'm realizing as I get older and older. A lot of realtors are walking around selling real estate and they have no idea how it actually works. Mm-hmm. And whether that's on the residential or commercial side, they do a couple courses and they think they're experts. So that gave me an amazing baseline of knowledge when working with clients, when working with first-time home buyers when I was young. I started in the business at 21, so I was young.
21, that is young.
Yeah. I'm 35 now, going on my 14th year in the business. So it gave me a huge depth of knowledge, but also was a great kind of differentiator for myself. There's always young agents, new agents talking about like, how am I going to break in against these seasoned vets? Well, I actually know how this is built, how it works. I can talk about that. I can help on a home inspection. The cliche, like dad with the tool belt showing up to the showing. I could actually talk the talk with him, which a lot of realtors couldn't. Great. And it just kind of jumped from there. I was with Forest Hill Real Estate for, I think...
Sorry, before you get into that. Did you jump in at 21 full-time?
Yeah, full-time. Yeah, good. Nothing else, full-time. I started with Forest Hill Real Estate. I was with Ed Wolf at Bayview and Shepherd. And I remember when offices were a very different dynamic and setup than they are now, sitting in like the computer bank trying to figure out how to log into MLS because we didn't even learn that in our courses, and just like starting, and like everybody, I started a ton of leases. A lot of my friends were still in university or coming out of university, getting jobs, moving out of their parents' house. Ton of leases, a ton of pestering friends, to get connected with their parents and things like that. My first listing I had came from door knocking. I just knocked on an expired listing on their door 6 times. And then after 6 times, I finally got that call and just snowballed from there.
Was that a standard practice of yours, door knocking, when you started?
Yeah, when I started out, we started the day before social media.
It's very KW of you, so.
Well, it was like before social media too, right? And I mean, Facebook was just becoming a thing. There was no Instagram. There was no ability to just post a video or talk about a topic and just get it out there and get 5, 10, 15, 20,000 views. You had to really literally pound the pavement.
Yeah.
So instead of cold door knocking, I figured expireds were warm leads. They, for one reason or another, they wanted to sell, whether it didn't work out on value or representation, or they just changed their mind. So I started there, and that's kind of where I started to build my first position of being a listing agent rather than just a buyer agent.
Nice.
Yeah.
And at Forest Hill, did you work under anybody? Did you have anybody that you trained with? Or?
No, I started with on my own. I mean, I had a lot of, I'd call them mentors. I'll give them a shout out. Lahav Resnick was probably one of my first big mentors in the business. Lahav and Resnick and Mike Switzer at Forest Hill. They were awesome. Still keep in touch with them. Still very close with them. But I never worked on a team. I just think with my personality too, not sure a team would have wanted me. I'm kidding. Yeah. But I'm very type A personality. I've had partners. I have a team now. We've had agents cycle through, and you go through the growing pains and different experiences. But no, I was always kind of from the get-go on my own and running my own business.
And you left Forest Hill, did you go right to PSR?
Yeah, I went to PSR.
And what year was that?
That was 2015, tail end 2015.
Yeah, so a few years after we left. So what made you take that move or make that move?
I mean, I think it's a few things, right? One is I think every agent, especially when they're new and been in one place for a long time, they start to see the bright, shiny lights and get attracted to different things. And grass is always greener on the other side, right? So they want to experience something else. But the big thing that brought me to PSR was, one, moving into the city. Was just a brokerage that was local to where I was. I really liked the boutique feel of it, the luxury feel, and then the access to new and pre-construction. As you know, PSR, we do have a new pre-construction division, where it's gone beyond just Freed's projects. We've represented other developers.
Yep.
And that was something that I didn't have in my business, that before that world got to where it is today, where you could pick up stuff for $500-600 a square foot and there was good value. I wanted to learn about it, and I wanted to have it in-house, where it wasn't just trying to line up as a VIP or a platinum agent and jump up and down. Yeah. So that's really what brought me through. My first year there, the management team really pushed me to get into pre-con. I did really well with it. That's another avenue of income, another supplemental income avenue besides just running and around and trying to live and die on residential real estate.
Yeah.
And that kind of then blossomed, I guess, my path of where I'm at now, where my background is residential, but the core of my business is more investment focused. And, a lot of my clients have bought their forever home, which I know we've talked about, or bought their 10 or 15, 20-year home, but are looking to either build their portfolio, build for their kids, get into the secondary market, and for lifestyle purposes. So I've kind of angled that way, but that was really the first.
How did that transition happen into the investor side of business?
So I think it was natural. One, I think again, going back to being entrepreneurial is something I was always interested in. I have investment properties myself, and I just always thought there's got to be more than residential real estate. There came, I don't know if I'm going to blow up myself here, but there came a point in my career where I was just bored of dealing with people's dishwasher problems. You close and your dishwasher leaks, and it's fuck, we got to call. And I wanted something more. And not to sound arrogant or I have an ego, but I knew I was capable of more.
Yeah.
And so getting into the investment market, I just found I was able to provide, I'll call it more value, but different value to my clients. Rather than when I started in residential, my value was I actually knew how homes were built and I could talk about them. Now it's I could earn my commissions, where you don't mind paying us a commission when you're making money.
Yeah.
And I could show you how to make money, not just how to park your family.
Yeah. I like the black and white aspect of it, right? Like it's you know,
it's a business transaction.
You're assessing a property on a spreadsheet as opposed to the emotional side of you know, getting into your forever home, right?
Correct. It was, there's no emotion, there's no school involved, there's anything. A lot of it's numbers, a lot of it's, you know, projecting future value, whether it's development or actually adding value to the property. So I just really liked it. And having the construction background, that's when it got into like, you know, renovations and flips on the residential side, different conversions on the industrial side. And I think when COVID kind of hit, not to go back to that, but a lot of people started to look at real estate in a little bit of a different way. Like the cottage market boomed, and that became an investment avenue for a lot of people through Airbnb, through short-term rental, or as a way they could justify using a cottage for X amount of weeks because they had it rented for other ones. And it just kind of, the investment side just gave me, you know, the cliche thing of an entrepreneur, realtor, like I do something different every day, but it really gave me something different every day. It wasn't neighborhood focused or network focused on trying to find, you know, the same cookie cutter house in an area and just wait for one to come up. It was more something new, something different every day, and something that you can approach in a little bit of a different way. Yeah.
Right. So you did. You also mixed in, especially during COVID, the Muskoka market into your business. Tell me about that. And
so Muskoka,
was it a direction of convenience just because you're up there, or are you pretty tied into Muskoka?
Like yes and no, kind of reverse. So that was like passion project or something I'm really passionate about, an area turned into business, which I think is awesome. My brother and sister-in-law bought up there a number of years ago. I always went to camp like up in cottage country. I always was on the water, knew I wanted to have a place. My grandfather had a cabin on Lake of Bays that we went to for a long time. But my brother and sister-in-law bought a place, and my wife and I would go up there all the time. We weren't even married at the time yet. And I kind of just like fell in love with the lifestyle. Like I said, we weren't even married yet, so I guess technically we're only my brother and sister-in-law, and I'm like going up a day, 2 days before everybody, getting it ready, huge cookouts, and just like this is something that I want for our family. Fast forward, we got married. After we got married, we went up to the cottage for a couple weeks to spend some time up there. Cottage 10 doors down comes up for sale. My left hand, I'm like canceling our honeymoon. I'm like, my right hand, I'm typing an offer for this cottage, and my wife's just like looking at me like, what is going on? Completely disgusting bungalow that we ended up gutting, landscaping over the next 5 years. Steve Haid, who was at PSR at the time, had a connection to Muskoka, had family up there, was kind of doing the Toronto to Muskoka back and forth run. And I said to him, like, this is an awesome market. I love it. Let's join forces. Let's partner up here and start working together. And that was 2018.
So that was the launch of the PSR branch.
That was the launch of Steve and I, working up there. So that was 2018.
And opening the branch, correct?
2019, we ended up opening. We're like, this is real. The way to the office was we wanted to put up a billboard on one of the highways. And we just couldn't get availability. We weren't like a local enough name, so nobody wanted to give the Toronto guys a billboard. Ended up connecting with a contact that we knew in Toronto that owned the office in Gravenhurst, in Muskoka. Okay. It's like, my tenants are moving out. This is perfect. The cost of real estate up there was very similar to what these big guys are charging to a billboard. And so Steve and I kind of just full force went ahead 2019, 2020 COVID hit. So our rolling the dice move on opening an office in Muskoka, which everybody said is not a great market, can't be done, looked like a genius play because we just beat COVID by 8 months. Yeah. Everybody's like, you guys are so smart for doing it. We're like, yeah, of course. Yeah, we knew that was coming, right? Yeah.
It's funny. We went with our Davenport office. We went through the exact same thought process. The billboard up on the roof was $17,000 a month. So we rented the space on the corner at Davenport and Bedford there, right? Yeah. For like half that.
So we were talking about like 10% of those values in Muskoka, but like, same thing, right? Yeah. And it just made sense. And then we opened the doors, COVID happened, next season, cottages were all the rage for a few years. We ended up building out the team there. We have about 10 agents out of that office now, which is awesome for a seasonal office. Yeah, it's a really awesome team up there. And not shy to say, like, we definitely broke in on the smaller lakes, lower price point cottages, and now we're pushing all the way through to luxury real estate. Our main focus is on the big 3 lakes. We're doing like a lot of high-end stuff in the $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million range now. So it's really been that like grassroots journey of we didn't have any contact there, no office, and built it out. And then shout out to Freed, Peter, and his whole venture into the resort world with Muskoka Bay and now Deerhurst and Horseshoe Valley and then Collingwood. that was just like an awesome, to circle back on the pre-construction, that was an awesome secondary thing for us to have up there.
And he's jumped in a big way up there. And
huge way. And it's been great for our office, like selfishly, but also I think really good for up there because a lot of cottage country was missing like those amenities. And what's happening at Muskoka Bay is like night and day from when it launched. Deerhurst is getting a whole facelift, new real estate. Horseshoe Valley is like an awesome destination now, not just a hill and farm country. And then everybody knows Collingwood like speaks for itself. To jump into that market with something fresh in the village is going to be awesome.
It's funny. He was really a pioneer, right? Like Peter's always been that guy that's like, if you build it, they will come. Like Field of Dreams,
You couldn't say it better.
I'm sure you've heard it, but his story about how Muskoka Bay came to be, and him like in the winter trekking through with big rubber boots onto this property that was up for sale, almost getting lost because nightfall was coming.
The one thing I'll say about him is very hands-on, right?
Yeah,
and definitely a visionary. People sometimes question that vision, but often proves them wrong, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's definitely happened in cottage country at Muskoka Bay specifically. Before they opened, like you said, everybody thought he was crazy. 10 years ago when it first opened, nobody knew what it was. And now, in the summer, it's hard to get a room there.
No,
it's crazy, right?
It was so, it was a long road for him up in Muskoka Bay, but like you go up there now, it's just like night and day from a few years ago.
And I love it. And selfishly being a cottage, I'm in Gravenhurst, close by.
It's a great resort.
Great to have the golf, the amenities, and all sorts of stuff. So yeah,
amazing.
It's been cool.
Tell me, I know you're now into a VP role, a VP of resale division, I believe, at PSR. Tell me, what is that? What does that look like on a daily basis for you?
So that's a different challenge, right? I never thought, like, I've always had a team, and so there's always been a small management aspect to the business, and I never thought I would get into the management role. And it kind of just organically happened with the growth and changeover at PSR. We've definitely had some changes over the last few years, and we've become a very agent-focused brokerage. And not that we weren't before, but I think there's a lot of, which we've talked about off cam before, there's a lot of brokerages that operate as if they're realtors almost, where all their training, all of their support is focused on buyers and sellers. And really when you break it down outside of what the paperwork actually says, buyers and sellers are the clients of the realtors, and the realtors are clients of the brokerage.
Yeah, that's right.
So I really started to just push our management. Like, this is what we need as agents. It's funny now, which is like a joke in the office, that I'm one of the more seasoned PSR agents because, it's just what happens over a 7 to 10 year period.
You have some grades coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, it's age or stress. But so I just started to push management. Like, this is what we need as agents. This is what we need to feel supported, to be able to go out and make more money, to be able to service our clients better, to provide them, to justify our commissions, right?
For sure.
Real estate in Toronto is not cheap anymore. Commissions are what they are, and we need to be able to justify that sometimes, where I'm not scared to say it. In the last 10 years, prices have gone up so much, but our work has, it's shifted, but it's stayed relatively the same in terms of like task on hand, but our income has gone up, and we need to provide more to our clients to be able to ask for that same rate. And I'm not scared to say that to clients, to agents, or whatever. So we started to push the office for it. And then Arif, who is the president there,
old friend. I was probably one of Reese's first clients back in the day. Was
client. I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say quality client. Wow.
Client. Yeah. So I was, like I said, I met Peter and became friends with Peter at 66 Portland. Reef was just getting into the business. I was friends with his older brother, AJ, and I think he just got licensed and he got a listing of mine. And I worked with him for years before getting into the business. So he's an old friend and a great guy.
Which is...
It's nice to see him in that role.
It's awesome to see the connection we all have, right? Yeah. Even when we work together, lead brokerages, shift brokerages, start our own thing, we all get to keep the same camaraderie and keep the relationships. But yeah, so Reef was and is the president. He and I just really hit it off, like very similar style in terms of how we approach the business, just how we dress every day, how we act. And our relationship grew. And then I kind of pitched him, and I was like, listen, like, I'm kind of doing a lot of this stuff for the brokerage anyways, being a seasoned vet. You're extremely hands-on with the resale side, but also getting pulled in a lot of directions with the new construction side as that part of PSR grows and exponentially grows. It wasn't like a you need help, but we can offer more to our clients by growing our management team. And so we kind of did like a trial period, went really well, and that's been where I've launched off now. And from there, I guess the main focus of my role is on resale. And it's mentorship with agents, training with agents, making sure that they're getting the support they need, which is like the cliche stuff, but also making sure that PSR is kind of forefront in the industry with technology. We're building out like an amazing AI platform that agents are already using in-house, but that's, with that growing every day. Our marketing department, I think, is top notch. Like a lot of brokerages have that in-house now, but I'm not sure that they're, not to bash other offices, brands, but they're able to pump out what our marketing team is. They're so skilled and amazing. And then it's expansion. We do not franchise out at PSR, which I think is awesome because it keeps the brand consistent. And we have a lot of our partners that actually just started in the brokerage as realtors. And then they elevated their business and their success and their market share to a point of where it only made sense to go into a partnership role. So a lot of my role there is working with the partners, growing our offices, recruiting, and in the last year or so, we've definitely grown. When I started at PSR, we were a couple offices. Now we're head office on King Street. We have our Forest Hill office, our Muskoka office, Kleinburg, Port Credit, Burlington, and then I guess I'll drop the announcement. Midtown Toronto opening very soon.
Nice.
So yeah, we're actively looking for our space now and have some really strong Midtown agents that are going to come onto the brand. So that's kind of what the role has been, and it's been awesome. It's definitely been a shift and a different year, and to take that role on in this market has definitely been interesting, dealing with agents and as they deal with all of their stuff with clients. But I love it, and obviously I'm compensated for the role, but it's cool to be focusing on other realtors and giving back and sharing the knowledge rather than just like having it all in your brain after 14 years and just spitting it out to buyers and sellers.
Yeah, it's great. I'm happy to hear it. It's if you listen to any of my podcasts, like we get into this a lot, but the role between, or the relationship between the agent and the brokerage owner over the last 2 or 3 decades has just completely eroded, right? The suppression of commission splits between the agent 100%. And the broker has kind of led that, but the service aspect has completely disappeared, right? I don't care what anybody says. I've been on this rant lately that 95% of agents are not entrepreneurs, but
they get told they are.
95% of the exactly. Yeah. 95% of the broker owners out there are not providing a valuable service to the agents, right? Like everything you just talked about, and they become deal processing centers and answering phones for agents, and that's it. And that's why the splits have gone down so dramatically. The value is just not there. So it's nice seeing the next generation of broker owners putting that value back into the relationship.
I think you nailed it, 100%. The brokerages, it just got to a point, especially with technology, where a lot of agents could access things on their own. The brokerages were not offering enough to justify their splits. For sure. So the agents kind of took control. It's like the inmates running the prison type.
Especially the big team leads.
No,
right?
but the agents kind of took control, and they were able to dictate what they wanted, and then it kind of became a terrible cycle. Because once the agent splits with the brokerage became so thin on the brokerage side, the margins, the brokerages weren't making enough to keep the lights on sometimes, let alone invest back into the business and provide to the agents. And I got to give a big shout out to like all of our realtors at PSR. They've definitely bought it, which is awesome, and they've seen like how much we're working to try and do for them to grow, but they also know that there are growing pains with that. Nobody's going to be perfect, and just like I think the respect and the support we get from our agents who have bought into our vision to know this is a process, but if they stick along, they're going to take advantage every step of the way, has been awesome. And then I guess it comes to culture, right? Like we definitely have a great culture. We're very strict on who we hire, which I think is a good thing. We're not just anybody that's got a license come in, and it allows us to do these things.
That's great. That's great. Where do you see PSR in the next 5 years?
I love that question, right? Because if you asked me where I saw myself, let alone PSR 5 years ago, with everything that we've gone through, I wouldn't know how to answer. I think PSR, where I see them, is we're always evolving, right? Which is the cheesy answer, but we're very much on our 5-year path right now, our growth path right now. I think our expansion as our market share grows across Ontario is definitely on our radar and maybe beyond. I think growing our brokerage in terms of the number of agents we have is definitely the forefront right now, because that's how we're able to grow the brand, but keeping it, not to repeat myself, at a very specific criteria of realtor that we're attracting. And then I think, something I'm really trying to push is, I call it like the Domino's pizza model. They were a pizza pizza franchise that turned into a tech company. We're very much trying to push on technology and not become a tech company instead of a brokerage, but become a tech company where we're able to offer everything to our agents and build it in-house rather than you have 100 different accounts with all these different applications trying to service your clients. Yep. So our focus right now is office growth, realtor growth, and then keep building our tech. And I think that's kind of like in our 5-year plan.
Not to get into details.
Check in 6 months, it might change, but yeah.
Not to get into details, but what does the tech look like as far as like what type of services it's going to provide for the agents?
So it's kind of twofold. So it started as a marketing platform. Platform's actually called Mave. So it started as a marketing platform where the easiest way to describe it was like a Canva on steroids. Rather than having to create everything through Canva, you had all of your branding, everything right there, all of your listing collateral, and then it was AI driven. So you could talk to the software, you could talk to the tech and have it built for you. So you're not sitting there. We're not graphic designers, right? A lot of realtors have to become that. We got to kind of become jack of all trades, but we're not graphic designers. And we don't have the time to do it. So this kind of would do it in the background as you were there. And now it's evolved into a full information platform. So assisting from marketing, paperwork, to just gathering information when you're at a listing. I think it's awesome to be prepared, and you can never be too prepared, but sometimes you go with a client, you're showing 5, 6, 7, 8 homes. Information can get jumbled, things get jumbled, and you don't want to be standing there fumbling through papers like we used to, like listings and stuff. So we have the app that'll help you with that. What's school district? What are the details on this house? What was a previous sale? You can talk to the AI. It'll pull that information for you, and then you have that information, that access to your clients right away. It doesn't matter how prepared you are, you're not missing a beat, and it's just about support. So that's kind of the first platform for it, and then the next stages are TBD. We'll let you know on part 2 of this podcast. Okay. Yeah.
What where do you see the demand heading from the new generation of agents that are coming out? Like what do you see? What are they looking for in their brokerage?
You can get me in trouble, right? I think
we have to learn. Like we rant a lot. About the next generation. We always like to talk about the next generation, but. There's a lot of value I see in this generation coming out.
I learn from them every day. I really, really do. One of the awesome things about our brokerage is our culture, but we definitely have, the old seasoned vets, and then a lot of new agents that are in their early 20s, mid 20s, like when I started in the business, that are coming out and doing incredible things. And so being in the office and in that space, like sitting in the bullpen, not in an office every day, I definitely learn from that next generation all the time. And I think it gives me the ability to also learn what they want, what their needs are, right? And it's funny, we were talking about this before we went on camera. I was talking about this with a buddy this week. Like, we're all helicopter parents these days, even if we think we're not, and we're never going to be that parent. Like with the technology, like you're always on, right? Time, yeah. Everybody's a helicopter parent, and I joke with my buddies about it of like, how dependent is my son going to be on me when he's older because of that? And it's kind of at that point with realtors where, not to their fault, but the next generation need a lot of support. They have information overload. And again, like it's not their fault. It's like sensory overload, information overload, which we didn't really have when we started. It was like pretty simple. You went from like your listing book that got delivered to the office all the time to the internet was invented, and we went on to MLS. But now like they're getting analytics and AI and stuff all over. So the first thing that I found, help realtors is kind of hone in on that. Like really get organized. I think that's what the next generation needs is, like you said, everybody thinks they're an entrepreneur, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty basic, but business planning, like how to take all of this information, all of this technology, all of these cool things you can do and actually turn it into a business and then articulate that to your clients where it translates, where it's value to them and you're not just like boom, boom, boom. And then I think really what the next generation of agents need is to be able to be in a place where they're kept at the forefront of this technology, where they feel safe that they're not going to be replaced by technology. That I think everybody in every industry has that like back of their mind thing with AI, but where they are working with somebody that understands it so that we can utilize it as a tool, not be replaced. And so that's really the biggest thing I'm trying to do is constantly learn.
I think that's a really important point.
So
that's a really important point. Like the whole idea of like AI replacing realtors, even like with what's going on in the States with the lawsuits and everything. My mother
for that foot that anvil to drop here, right?
Yeah, but like you said, this is a relationship business, and I don't see AI replacing anybody anytime soon. People want to be protected and handheld through these transactions, and that's just not going to happen with AI right now. I'm not saying.
No, but I agree. I agree. Like AI is a tool,
soon,
right? Like I could get on my whole Muskoka country boy rant about homesteads and off the grid and all that, in which like I'm very much nerdy about and passionate about. But even in that, like it becomes a tool, right? So I'm finding with this generation, and speaking of what you said, to just my brain's going, what I find with them a lot is like it became this sensory overload and it became too much, and now everybody kind of wants to go back to like a simpler time, right? And so the key thing you said is this is a relationship business. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with a bot or with a chat bot or with somebody they don't know. They want that to give them information instantly, which maybe a human can't do, and then they want to analyze that information with a human. And not analyze like the numbers in a spreadsheet with a human. They want to go over, if it's a residential house, the emotion, like the impact of it. If it's an investment property, they want to be able to talk to a realtor, to somebody like boots on the ground, about what's happening in our city that adds future value to this property, not what is the curve on this spreadsheet going to be, right? And I think that's really where realtors have to realize their value is, and use these tools to be able to provide information quicker, to provide more information than we were able to before, to educate ourselves more. Like, the access to AI, I can analyze properties like this, which before took a lot of legwork, and now it's on my job to be able to translate that in my relationships and hit the goals of my clients.
I'll give you an example of why that's true. Is I love technology.
Yep.
I love apps. Like the apps that are on the iPhones these days. I'm not an Android guy. I'm an iPhone guy.
Yeah.
But the apps, I use an app for everything. Right. My obviously reading and digital books and audiobooks and whatnot. But my workouts I have an app for my workouts. I have an app that follows all my macros and my diet, my nutrition, whatnot. I have an app that links me to my healthcare, private healthcare, and I use all these things. But just before you came in here, I was on an hour-long call with a guy that I'm going to be hiring to just check in, to evaluate everything with me, evaluate my nutrition, evaluate my workouts, evaluate my labs, what my medical doctors are telling me, to give me his input and
you need somebody to translate. You need somebody.
I still want that relationship. I still want
somebody to work your brain out for you.
I want a human to help me put it all together.
Somebody without without bias, that can look, outside looking in, or from a macro point of view.
Mark, you're still fat. This isn't working. Right?
Exactly right. Yeah. Like, but no, it's somebody. It's exactly somebody that actually tell you to put the chips down, not the voice in your head. Like, but no, I get that. Like, this is exactly what I'm saying. Everybody is in an information overload,
for sure,
state.
You have to decipher
and
it
I
all.
think the advantage that you and I have, or our generation of realtor has, is we've kind of been put through the ringer, where we know the business inside and out. We understand real estate inside and out. We understand the transaction process. We understand the emotion and the psychology of buyers and sellers. So this information is a lot for us, but we're able to digest it differently, or we're just old and naive and able to block it out. I'm not sure. But the new generation, where they're still trying to learn the business, and then they get all of this piled on top of them.
Yeah, for sure.
I can only imagine, right? Yeah. And it's a lot. And so to go back to like role as VP and all of this stuff, I look at, my mentors and how much time they took with me, where sure, they own the brokerage. So if I sold something, they got a little something eventually, but how much actual time they took mentoring me. And that's kind of where like I see the biggest value that I can bring to the younger generation, is just like be there. And not in a cheesy hold your hand way, but be a wall to bounce stuff off, ideas off of, and be there to help you navigate the business, because that's something that's like a habit for us, right? Yeah. And then the give back is, as I'm helping you navigate the business, they help me learn the technology and learn the next generation of stuff, and it's kind of always going. I've had this like this kind of maybe unrealistic like anxiety always in my career, that, and I think this comes in with every residential realtor, that I'm going to hit a certain age of my career or cap where my network is not going to be buying or selling their homes anymore. Like, they're just going to be there, and how am I going to continue my business at this point? And I think we have seen it historically in our business. Like, there is probably a large percentage from volume of younger realtors, like under 50, that are doing a transaction than over. And I think now working with a lot of younger agents and learning this technology, it's the first time we're seeing like it mesh in and, you know, kind of get out some of these boundaries and be able to connect with different demographics, different networks, different audiences, whether it's age or city.
And I think that's where this stuff comes in, right? Like the whole idea of content creation, right? Like when I talk to a lot of older agents and within my company and outside my company, so many of them are anti digital advertising. They're anti-digital, you know, creating digital content. And I'm not even talking about digital advertising. It's more about the content. And I think that those books of business, they could do so well with some content, because just because you've been dealing with these clients for the last 30 years doesn't necessarily mean that their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids are going to continue to deal with you because you're the boss in the neighborhood, right? Like that content.
Like the turnover of book of business in our industry is not like a real thing, right?
Right.
It's a relationship business. So
a lot of these books are not assets. Right?
No,
like
so there's no like, it's not like the insurance industry or something else. Like you turn over a book of business and it's only how well I can rebuild all of those relationships with all these people.
Sure.
Otherwise,
I cringe when I hear people say I bought a book. What did you pay for it? What is the structure of the deal?
I don't
right?
Want to know, yeah.
You know, like that's the idea of the succession plan. Like, you know, doesn't exist in this business for the most part. We've been doing a good job internally here of creating it. But like, you know, like I said, grandkids aren't going to necessarily use you because you're the boss in that neighborhood.
No.
And you have been for the last 30 years.
And we look at it on the brokerage model. Like when we've looked at our model, you talk about our 5-year plan. It doesn't make sense to buy other brokerages. Not really, because what are you paying for?
No.
Right?
No, like if I was to go down there and force a sale of PSR and buy PSR, it could literally be worth 50% of what I paid for it next year, or even in 3 months' time.
Yeah,
right. It's a tough business.
Like we went through this. It's not a shock or anything that's been hidden in the industry. When our management team, you know, went out to go full-time new construction, when Eric and Sarner did that a number of years ago, a lot of agents, they were just like, okay, that was my relationship, and they went on to different brokerages and tried new things, or went with who they knew, their relationship, right? And it's very similar on the clients. Like, it's just because the brand is here and new management comes in doesn't mean that they have those relationships to maintain that book. And that's just like what happens, right? And it's very much a relationship-based business.
I can attest to that too. And sorry, I got that cough still.
Oh, it's all good.
I can attest to that because, you know, Peter and I have always had a unwritten rule about recruiting each other's agents and whatnot. So we don't recruit at PSR, but there's a few times it's kind of slipped through the cracks where I hire a third-party recruiting company, or I brought in a new recruiter, and they go into IMS, pull the Rolodex of agents, and start calling,
inbound.
right?
Or it's inbound. You get the call from somebody that's there, right?
PSR agents are extremely loyal, and they voice it on the call. Right, so it's a testament to what you're talking about and the relationship you build with the agents. So,
and we try and do that, and that's like, again.
And then I give them shit, just for the record.
Yeah, but you should, right? Anybody working with me should get a little bit of grief, but no, it's
no, the recruiters.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was the other way around. The agents, yeah. I mean that's a whole other thing, but no, I think it's to what we're trying to do to a culture you have here. It's based on relationships, it's based on real value, and it's not just, you know, trying to turn over as many people as possible. And that's why our recruiting criteria is so tough, because we want to maintain that loyalty and we want to maintain the brand, and we want people to feel like they have growth within the company, not just, I'm a realtor here, what do I do? That there is growth potential, that we are expanding, that you can become a partner. And it's almost, which I find, like, I was always confused why brokerages didn't work this way. It's almost like how law firms work and a lot of accounting firms. Mm-hmm. And like, we're professionals just like that, right? Even if people don't think we are. We are professionals just like that, handling with just as big, you know, assets and deals and whatnot, that there should be a level where you can become a partner within your company and you can achieve and you can grow and have a succession plan in your company.
I agree.
And so that's really something that we're trying to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of loyalty amongst our realtors, is because they know we're loyal to them. We're not going to go just bring in all these random people that stack in random places.
Yeah, three of our offices are done the same way. We like branch partners where we've teamed up with the team leads, and I think I agree. It's like and not only that, the idea of bricks and mortar and opening up in every neighborhood, it's not feasible for brokers anymore.
It's the debate we're having right now.
Right,
I'm like the second floor office guy, and everybody's like the retail office guy, and I get it, right? Exposure's exposure, but what you're doing now, having the digital content, that's where a lot of your exposure is coming. It's not somebody walking down Yonge Street anymore, right? And I can tell you even Muskoka, where it's very much like a town vibe that we have there, it's very few people are walking into our Muskoka office, and we're on the most prominent or the most popular busy corner in Gravenhurst. We're on King Street. It's very few people that walk in the front door, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of
for sure.
digital connection.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I think I told you just on the call the other day. My whole, I'm not a on-camera guy. You don't see me volunteer to go up on the stage and grab a microphone ever, but the idea of this is just to get out there and get some exposure for the company, get some exposure for the leadership team within the company. But my audiences are realtors outside my company, but my audience is also my agents, right? I want them, I'm on this big kick about agents aren't entrepreneurs, and I want them to see what entrepreneurs are, right? So my guess, they're not all in the real estate business. They kind of vary. It's very entrepreneurial and leadership focused, but I want my agents seeing the type of agents that are successful in the business, right?
No, I think it's awesome for you to find a way to showcase that, right? And should lean into speak into the mic and speak right to the agents directly. I think real estate's awesome because it gives you so many avenues to be entrepreneurial, right? You don't have to be in a box. You can be an entrepreneur within your actual sales business. You now have access and information and a skill set to go out and invest in the world and start a portfolio, whether that's in short-term Airbnb and you want to become an entrepreneur there, if it's in multi-res, if it's industrial, you can get knowledge to do residential flips. You can just participate in, there's so many different ways. I know realtors that have gone into property management and grown massive companies that you can take this knowledge and this skill set and still be a realtor, but, be entrepreneurial in many different ways. And it's, what does every business coach say? You need multiple streams of income.
Exactly. There's multiple streams of income. There's multiple avenues of revenue.
Not just selling
in this business.
Not just selling.
For sure.
And your clients will resonate with that. We have clients that will do more business with us in the multi-resident investment side because they know either we have the skill set or we'll connect them through our business to manage that real estate, and it's not just on them. So if they're, out of sight, out of mind, hands off, and they're just investing in, collecting their dividend checks, then they're able to do more. And so it kind of feeds both sides for us, right? And I think realtors really need to look at the industry and real estate as a whole, not just how do I sell all the homes on the street.
Yeah, and I think for the realtors that are listening that are insulted by us talking about how realtors aren't entrepreneurs, or 95% of them aren't anyways.
Vet your business.
Yeah, and I think that if I'll talk to you directly right now. I think if you're feeling the crunch right now in this market the way it is, it's one of the reasons is exactly what you just said. You haven't created multiple revenue streams within your business.
Yeah,
right?
and I did that within my sales business, residential, industrial, cottages, investment focus, all of that, and Newcon, which is something I've talked about with realtors all the time, that I have multiple streams of income within my sales business. And then from there, now we've invested in real estate, we manage property for clients, we have both companies set up, incorporated, that we have multiple streams. And when the market's the way it is now, all of our businesses are real estate related, so everybody feels a pinch, but I'm not just relying on somebody buying a house this month to be able to pay the mortgage, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for realtors to understand. And it's the same thing as, it's kind of become a tough thing in Toronto with the way prices have been, but if you've never bought or sold a home or your own personal house and been through that process,
for sure.
If you've never leased and gone through that process, it's very hard to translate that or feel that with your clients. You might know the technical side of it, but you might not know the stress side of the investment or the emotional side of the residential deal. It's very hard to feel that, right? So it's kind of the same thing every step of your career. If you're a realtor and you don't believe in investing in real estate, how can you realistically, without being a salesperson, how can you honestly tell somebody to invest in real estate if you haven't done it yourself, right? Yeah. And if you haven't been through that yourself, how can you relate to investors if you don't know the stress of a tenant not paying rent or, some sort of a special assessment coming in or whatever else could happen, a market shift? And
I agree. I did 28 transactions, so buy and sell as a client. Prior to getting my license in real estate, right? Just my own properties, investment properties.
Right.
And so when I came into the business, I definitely had a leg up. I had to learn the paperwork. I remember my first 3 months in the business, just at licensing. I was at PSR, and there was 28 listings in the brokerage that month. It was July. I can't remember what year. Probably 2011. And there's 28 listings, and 17 were mine. 17 of the listings were mine, and I literally had no idea how to fill out paperwork.
Right.
I was in Eric's office every day, every time I either had an offer or was trying to deal with something, because I had no idea how to deal with paperwork.
100%. And I mean, I think that's happened to a lot of people, right? I had my real estate license where they're like, go sell people's biggest assets and deal with people's biggest investments. Yeah. And nobody taught me how to log into the MLS. And I'm like sitting there for still at day one, like, what do I do, right? And I mean, I think every industry, every business, there's like a level of fake it till you make it. But no, you got to go through that yourself. And the first transaction, like I said, the first transaction I did was for myself and a buddy. And at the end of that transaction, I turned around and I said, like, thank God that was for us, right? Like, you know what I mean? I might have lost that client, but no, that was it. And then I was able to go through it all. And then, that was right before the market popped off in 2010, 11. So 7 months later, we sold the property and went from there. But I was able in my first year to relate to people about buying and selling, about renting, about doing all of that stuff. And I think that gave me a leg up because I was able to connect, like you said, not just on the technical and how to do it, but connect on the actual emotional side of people and what they're going through, and they can see that I'm feeling it with them.
Yeah. Experience is everything, right? But years doesn't necessarily equate to experience. Like, experience is you're going through the processes, you're going through the failures, you're going through the successes, but you're analyzing what made you successful,
100%.
what made you fail, right? You have to go through that process and analyze what worked and what didn't.
And we do it at every stage, right? Like even now where I have some investments in some projects where at the end of the day, the ROI is beyond what we ever projected. And then I have some where it's a complete opposite. It's a horrible place beyond where we ever fathomed it could be, right? And it's just conditions of the market and going through and having the experience to do things and knowing that not everything's going to work out exactly how you plan, but having like the baseline knowledge, experience, and having yourself put together where you can deal with that and deal with hurdles and stuff. And I think like, the relying your whole career on the fake it till you make it, that like when you get into it, you need to know what you're doing, right? And when your clients get into it, you need to know how to relate to them with what they're doing. And sometimes it's as simple as, well, when this happened on my transaction, and just telling them that story of how you went through it to ease their mind so that they can think a little bit more clear. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talking with the market, bringing up the market. We're in one of the toughest markets. Like I said last week, I think I was talking to Jazz, like this is our 2008, right? Not from a price point perspective, but from a sales volume. We've actually, I think, surpassed the U.S. south of the border decline in sales volume.
It's been pretty drastic, right?
It's been bad.
Yeah.
So how, this next generation, there's a lot of positives. Everybody harps on the next generation always, but I think there's a ton of positive, like you were saying, like you learn a lot from these guys and girls. But how are they navigating this market, given, one of their weaknesses is the requirement for instant gratification, right? So
for sure.
How are you helping them navigate this?
So I think it's like, it's be like a duck, like calm on the surface and just underneath, right? Going nuts underneath the water. But no, I mean, I think working with agents on how to navigate this is the simple thing is good market, bad market, you need to sell real estate. That's your job, right? You need to help your clients either achieve their goals in buying, work through what they're going through and sell, and you have to do something. So the one thing that you cannot control in your business is market conditions. You can't. So put that aside, put it on a shelf, right? So now that you know the arena you're playing in, it's just about working in that arena. There's always sales to be had. You know what? Sales are down 30%. So, be a part of the group of realtors that are still selling. And that's
somebody's selling.
That's what I mean. That's what it is. Our sales are not zero, right? And so I think you have to take a realistic approach to this. Of most people, most realtors, most industries related to real estate, your business is going to take a little bit of a hit in a down market, right? We do really well in the hot markets, and we got to get through the down markets. But it's about, I think it's about taking the emotion away and keeping focused. So right now, I think what a lot of buyers and sellers want is information. And the biggest thing in a market right now, which doesn't always translate to dollars right away, but is being that resource for your clients. That's what I work on with agents, and understanding the market dynamics yourself extremely well so that you can talk about it with clients, because people want information. Everybody wants a realtor to have a crystal ball, right? But people want to have information. And if you're able to break down the market and explain things to your clients where it comes out advantageous to them, then that's going to translate to sales. That's going to translate to your business doing well and things moving forward. So to kind of put that into like real world examples, Outline Financial, who we work with like in-house, our mortgage, they're
the best,
right?
Yeah.
We can shut them out all day. they put together like an amazing chart, and I was shocked, and I kind of gave shit to the agents at PSR of how few of them used it, and then I saw it go out, which I'm sure they did for you, of buying then and buying now,
Yeah,
right?
great.
And like, would you rather buy something at $2 million at 2.5%, or buy the same asset at 1.6 or $1.5 million, even though it's at 6 or 7%, right?
Yeah.
We all know that rates are not going to stay this high forever, the same way we all knew that rates were not going to stay that low forever. What we don't know is where they're going to land and when that's going to happen, right? And anybody that tells you they do is out there.
We're supposed to be the professionals, right?
Right.
You know, so if you're going to call yourself a professional, you have to arm yourself with that type of information.
Right.
Because Jane and John Doe writing for Blog TO are
Yeah.
gathering information from every little source that they can and trying to interpret it, and they don't know.
It's clickbait, it's headlines, it's whatever.
So
we can get into analyzing that. It's when they talk about the Canadian market as a whole, and like there's so many sub-markets, even in Toronto, you know, there's so many different sub-markets in that change. You can't even talk about the Toronto market as a whole. This neighborhood's up, this one's down. Like, you got to look at where you're buying. But I think it's about information with these realtors and be able to arm your clients with that information, so that your clients who might not understand real estate in the way you do, might not analyze things the way you do, might not have the time to go through it the way you do, can look at the chart and say, you know what? It makes way more sense to buy this house now. I don't have to deal with a bidding war. I don't have to go in blind and not know.
So many reasons to buy now.
I can put conditions in and take my time to think about it and have an inspector walk through and go over with my bank again. Like, there's so many advantages. And at the end of the day, my payment is the exact same thing of what is going to be at 2%, but I bought the house at 10, 15, 20, 30% cheaper. So I think it's about having that. And when a lot of our realtors, that light bulb goes on, they get motivated again in this market, right?
Yeah. And, unfortunately, you never want to see someone in this situation, but there's a ton of opportunities on the buying side, because there's people that are in bad situations. People have to liquidate in the pre-construction world. Look at the assignments.
Look at cottages.
Like, people are walking away from assignments and leaving $200,000 and $300,000 deposits on the table.
I've never seen more, more realtors posting about 2020 prices, 2019 prices, than they've ever had before. And I've been in the business for 14 years, right? Like, I came in just after 2008. We've had our lulls, but most realtors, the majority of realtors right now, have only seen an upward trajectory in the industry, in the market. Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities if you play it right in this type of market, right? Like, everybody's sick of me quoting Warren Buffett, but Warren Buffett famously said, be weary when people are greedy, be greedy when people are weary. And for some reason, the common man forgets that all the time, right? And the rich are buying right now.
Listen,
right?
People like to move in packs, right? They have comfort knowing that their decisions are the decisions of the masses, because if it goes great. And if it goes bad, they have everybody with them, right? So people love moving together, and I understand why. It's basic. It's like basic human sentiment, right? Or emotion to do. And the few that can break off from the pack are the ones that they call them the 1%er, or whatever you want to call it, that do very well, right? And it's kind of the same thing as like when rates were low and everybody became a flipper. Everybody's a renovator and a home flipper. But if you actually break down their projects, in the 12 months it took them to flip that property, the market just went up 20%. They made no money on their work. They have no idea what they're doing. They got to take advantage of the market gains. And now it's kind of on the other side, is like you're seeing a lot of people get stuck, right? And so those people that got into positions of where they shouldn't have been in the first place, it's unfortunate. You don't want to put anybody in a bad position, like you said, but that becomes an opportunity for a lot of people that do know what they're doing, that are professionals in the real estate industry. And I think it's important, and it's our job as realtors to be able to identify that and bring these opportunities forward. I think in the last 10 years, in the multiple offers market that we knew, we always said, like, ignore list price. It's just a guide, right? Somebody comes out at $999 or $1,999. That's just a guide to what they want.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing right now. Ignore the list price, because that's just their pipe dream on what they hope to sell for. And when they're day 72 on the market and December's looming and they still haven't hit their price, use it as a guide. And if you were going to go in a multiple offer situation, 5-10% over asking, go in 5-10% under ask now and see what happens. I'm not somebody that is a strong believer in lowballing, but there is a market value. And I've been asking 1.5 for my house for 3 months and I'm not getting it. Guess what? The market's telling me that's not the value today.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Yeah. And opposite to that is, just because everybody's buying doesn't mean you're getting a deal.
Yeah.
Right. And times like this is where the deals are.
100%. This is where the deals are. And I think right now people are starting to realize that. A lot of my investors have been asking me for the last year, like, when's the bottom going to happen, right? And the funny thing about the bottom is you don't know that it's happened until it's already gone, right? Like you don't know it's the bottom until things start going back up.
No.
Because that's when the actual bottom is. So could things get worse from where they are now? Absolutely, right? Like who am I to say they can't? But can things get extremely, can they get much better, and can they go really quickly the other way? I think so too. So it's about analyzing every opportunity right now. If you're interested in buying, if your clients are interested in buying and investing, I think there's a ton of good opportunity, even if things go south a little bit, because real estate is long term. It's not a 12 or 24 month investment.
Exactly.
But you can get in at really good opportunities. And what people have to realize is sometimes that opportunity is not always in the dollars and cents. It's in location. It's a cliche thing, location, 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 right? There are just homes and there are multiplexes and buildings and properties and cottages that were never available before. That in a 2 and 3% cash flow, interest rate world where people can cash flow their properties, they would never be available. But now because of market conditions, you can get these properties, and that might be some of the value right there, right? Like long term, is you're able to secure some pretty prominent addresses.
Stop trying to catch a falling knife, right? Like you said, if it's long term, now's a great time. Even if we go down another 15 points, if it's long term, you're still going to be in a good position. And in a market like this, we're Toronto, right? We all know. I don't need to repeat all the data and everything that supports why Toronto's going to rebound.
Yeah,
because it will. But the demand is still there. That demand just needs to. The psychology of the buyers needs to come back in a positive way. But when it does, right, we're going to be in the same boat all over again.
You want to know why Toronto market scares me? I'll tell you, which is like a lot of realtors, maybe I won't start with that tagline. Why the Toronto market scares me is all of my clients have been telling me for the last 12 months, it has not fallen off enough or in a way that I thought it would, right? So that means in the worst market, highest rates we've ever had, it has not bottomed out how anybody thought it was going to or everybody projected to. But we all know from experience, and we all know in low markets, when it comes back with a vengeance. Yep. So you're worried about missing the bottom now. That shouldn't be your worry.
There's still
when it goes back up, we're gonna see all of a sudden it happens in 2 weeks.
Yep.
All of a sudden, that comp is 10% higher. It happens in 2 weeks, and the $2.5 million house is now $3 million overnight.
And you can say that for a lot of markets. I really believe in this market that to be more than true.
We can show it over and over, and like you said, not to repeat the data points, but over and over and over again. What scares me about Toronto was in the worst market conditions from volume and rates and affordability that we've ever had, it's been a slow drag to the bottom. And every single time we've seen rate breaks or rate cracks or any value behind the Toronto market, it takes off like a rocket. And that's even when rates were 4%.
I think that's
look in 2017.
Yeah.
Right? Like we didn't have 2% rates for the last 10 years. So when rates were 3.5, 3.7, 4, 4.25, the market was and that's what scares me about Toronto is everybody's trying to catch a falling knife, like you said, but what are you going to do when it flits the other way?
I don't know what created this. Maybe it was just the growth of Toronto that's happened so fast over the last 2 decades, 3 decades. But there's been a tremendous amount of growth. But one of the reasons for what you're talking about is the stubbornness of GTA sellers.
Yeah.
Right. And we're a real estate city. Like we really are. Like lots of people own multiple
100%.
properties, right? Because there's so many people moving into this city.
Yeah.
If you talk about
we're a proud city. People want to
own. You have 550,000
yeah.
immigrants coming into Canada. 60% of them are coming into Toronto and the GTA.
100%.
Right? Like it's and it's funny. Like even in social settings. When was the last time you were in a social setting? House party, out for dinner with people, and real estate didn't come up. Torontonians talk real estate all the time.
I hope nobody on the CRA is listening, but it's nice. Like every time I go anywhere, anybody, and they don't want to just say, how's the market? They want to get into a deep analytical dive about the market and have a real conversation and build a real relationship. And Toronto is, like you said, it is a real estate city. We're proud of our city. And that's kind of where everybody's scared about like the opposite way, like when's it all going to bottom out? That's not what scares me about Toronto. What scares me about Toronto is when it accelerates back the other way and all these people that are waiting for the bottom are just going to miss out on any opportunity, right? Yeah. The only thing worse than, I guess, no decision is indecision, and like sitting on the fence is never a good place to be.
That what I'm trying to say there too is where I was heading with that is that because people are so into real estate in Toronto, they're versed in the markets in Toronto. Like our clients are educated.
They're educated.
Right? They know what's happening.
Oh yeah.
But that's what makes them so stubborn as sellers in a down market like this.
Mm-hmm.
They're not losing their shirt. They're not losing their minds and panicking, and they're holding the line pretty well. 100%. Right? And that's why we haven't seen this massive 30% drop in pricing, 40% drop in pricing.
And I mean, and then you go down to the numbers. It comes from the growth, right? We had such extreme growth over a 12-year period, that people are holding a lot of equity in their home. So if they lose 10 or 15, even 30%, it doesn't force a sale necessarily, right? Like people have made that up in 5 years sometimes.
And they know what their neighbor sold for last year, and they don't want to sell for anything less, right?
100%. And I think it's kind of a testament to Toronto realtors also, or at least like the 1% that are doing 99% of the transactions, of supporting their clients and holding those values. And it might be a little bit of a slog like in a fight, but they're still getting pretty good values on the homes. And it might take 30, 40, 60 days to sell, but it's not selling at, a 8 price change position. It might have had 1, it might have had 2, but it found its market point. They stood their ground and it's selling. And I think that's, a sentiment to the professionalism of realtors, not just chasing commissions like the bad reputation we all have, but also shows like how proud owners are and the city, and that like, we will get through this tough market. I don't know when, but it's not going to be like this forever. And I think, I keep repeating myself, but that's where people are going to really have decisions to make, because there's going to be a lot of that I should have hindsight done it when rates were 6%, rather than, I don't think they're going back to 2, but rather when they break a little bit and just people feel confident in the market again.
Agreed. Okay, We'll move on to the final 2 questions, which everybody stresses about, and that is, what are your 2 favorite neighborhoods in Toronto?
My 2 favorite neighborhoods in Toronto. This is tough for me because, like, you could ask me my 2 favorite neighborhoods, period. I'd tell you they're both out of the city in Muskoka. So my 2 favorite neighborhoods in Toronto right now, like I do like, it's cliche, Midtown where we live, like the Avenue Lawrence area. Reason I like it is I think it's got a mix of everything. Like it's got really good restaurants and nightlife. A lot of the downtown restaurants I used to go to have opened up second locations and moved Midtown.
That's great.
It's really cool, and it's family oriented. Like it's
taken a while, but you're right. That's
it's happening, right? Yeah, it's great, and it's family oriented. I grew up in the suburbs. I never wanted to go back to the suburbs again. So I'm in a place where I'm 15 minutes of downtown, 20 minutes of downtown without Toronto traffic, but I should be. And then my son can walk to the park. Nice. So yeah, Midtown there, and then. I guess nightlife area is probably, like Ossington, Dundas, West End. That's where my wife and I find that we're going either Yorkville area or Ossington for dinner. Nice. But my real favorite neighborhoods would be cottage country neighborhoods.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That leads me to your 2 favorite restaurants then.
2 favorite restaurants?
Here in the city.
Wow. Okay, this is like on the spot, really the last 2 questions, I think. So, one, like I'm going to go like a really terrible answer, but it's Morton's. Like it's just the classic steakhouse. Yeah, Morton's is my favorite steakhouse in Toronto. Morton's, yeah. It's the most consistent meal, and just like I'm on my wife will laugh if she sees this. I'm on a tear with like the Toronto restaurant scene and where it's at right now. So definitely Morton's, and then next favorite restaurant. I'd probably say like Sunny Chinese for a mainstream that somebody likes, like which is really good, but more. Dim Tai Fung, like in Markham,
nice.
Dumpling awesome. Place, like that's kind of my thing.
What's your tear on the restaurant scene right now?
So my tear on the restaurant scene, I think it's the whole world, right? Like I don't think Toronto has great. I'm gonna get canceled. Like this is so fucked. I'm not gonna be allowed anywhere. I'm gonna get all my food tempered. I just like outside of a few food groups that are doing awesome things, I don't think Toronto has a restaurant scene that matches the caliber of our city. Let's put it that way. Like I think you go out and you have a great meal and then you get the bill and you're like, fuck, like what was that? Where you go out to cities like, New York, Chicago, like that are on the same caliber as us and they just have a much more vibrant restaurant scene. I think the biggest thing Toronto has going for it is, it's cliche, but we're a super multicultural city. So if you want real food, I don't think there's a city that's better than getting real food from, a vast array of different cultures, like actual real home style cooking. And that's kind of where like I'm always going to these random neighborhoods with my buddies and in Markham and all places for these hole in the wall restaurants, because that's where I think Toronto thrives. Like the mainstream stuff is, I don't know. It's all right. And it sucks because like to back that up, I think before COVID and a long time ago, like it used to be amazing. My wife and I would go out Friday and Saturday every night and enjoy, and now it's just,
it's funny.
I'd rather put the Traeger on at home.
I consider myself a foodie. I do a lot of cooking myself, and I used to be like the first person, you're on vacation, you meet other tourists from around the world, and I used to brag about Toronto. Like back in the day, I guess like 2008, 2009, like this like revolution happened in Toronto, and some great chefs popped up doing some really interesting things. Like Rob Gentile, when they launched
I got
Buka
married
Rob,
at Buka.
Yeah,
on King. That's where we got married.
I did my wedding dinner there as well.
So that's where we got
Rob
married.
Gentile is one of my favorite chefs back in the day, and he's no longer here in Toronto. He's out west. I think he's in LA, right? Yeah. But I think he was one of the pioneers during that revolution. And then for some reason, like I don't want to mean to pick on hipsters in this next generation, but there's almost like it's more focus on being the fancier, not fancier is the wrong word. I'm going to sound ignorant here, but like the making it into art as opposed to the necessities of cooking. Nathan Silverton talks about it all the time. Like people are forgetting about the basics of cooking and putting flavors together that complement one another, and they're more focused on.
And I'm kind of with you. It's funny, like for sitting here and like struggling to name my favorite restaurants, kind of just like was weird for me because a few years ago I'd have named off 20, like just bang, bang, bang. But yeah, like I am a foodie. Like I love good food. My wife and I are very focused on high quality food, like at home. And it's kind of gotten to the point of like, on a value standpoint, but also just taste and quality. Like we'd rather throw the Traeger on at home and put the 10, 12 hours, 15 hours into a brisket and like a labor of love and come out with that than
Which Traeger? I have to ask which Traeger.
So I have a Timberline, but mine's probably 6 or 7 years old now. Like the new ones are insane.
I have the Timberline 1300, but I'm seeing the new ones.
The new ones, like they're insane. I have
4 barbecues in my backyard.
Okay, so you're with me, right? Like I have at the cottage my Weber and my Traeger and everything at the cottage, and like it goes on, and I love to do it. Like my favorite thing actually on the Traeger is like I'll do a whole side of salmon or like a brisket. But yeah, it's just like we'd rather do that than go out in the Toronto scene a lot, which. It's kind of sad.
I have to give a shout out though, talking about restaurants. Thanos Trippy's coming on here soon. Mamaka's down on Ossington.
Okay, so we love it. We're going, what's it, Klukla's or something?
Yeah, Klukla's, yeah.
So I'm going Saturday night, with my wife. We've never been, so just booked the reservation. Like,
nice.
That's a place, like, they're great. Mamaka's is always, like, consistent, very good. You never walk out of there unhappy, right? And then I think now that, like, you put me on the spot, now that we're on food and thinking about it, one of our favorite places to go now is Geary Street, which is kind of not really known. It's like what Ossington almost used to be, like a lot of breweries and almost like restaurants and old auto body shops and stuff. But yeah, there's a few really good spots there. So we'll go walk there, and yeah, it's kind of cool.
Nice. It's funny talking about back to Mamaka's for a second. Yeah. So just above Kukla, Thanos is opening up an event space there. So if you're ever doing any client events, think of it.
I didn't know that.
He's the whole goal of it is it's just for small intimate dinners and whatnot. I think he can handle like 50 people.
Okay.
But he's trying to make an event space that feels like you're home in your big kitchen, like your own kitchen, right? So
which is funny. Like I think coming out of COVID, where everybody's like a home cook, it's kind of now they want that feel.
Exactly. Talking about Geary though, it's funny. Back in the day when I first met Peter, we used to do walks around the different neighborhoods and look at little pockets and whatnot. And then a few times we do a drive, and I remember doing a drive up to Geary Avenue with him and Craigie Mond at the time, and looking at Geary and Peter saying this street eventually one day is going to pop.
Yeah,
and you can see it now. Like the businesses are starting there, and it's coming. And development. You have Galleria Mall just south of there, southwest of there. So I love Geary. I think it's a great. There's a great butcher there. The son of a butcher.
Yeah, there's and I'm gonna butcher the name, but there's no pun intended. But there's like great pasta shop. Like I think it was maybe the best restaurant in the city.
What's it called?
I'm gonna screw.
It's right beside Dark Horse.
Yeah, exactly where it is. Right beside Dark Horse. You gotta line up. Baldassare, something.
Yeah, Baldassare.
There you go. So yeah, you got to get there for noon. Stand in line for an hour and a half, which I won't. Like I will not go without a reservation. It's not. I just refuse to wait in line anywhere.
No, I know.
And it's just been a thing like my whole life. And so my wife made me go to this place. She's like, pizza pasta is what she lives on, and stand in line for an hour and a half. Yeah. And I can tell you it's worth it. It's the best meal I've had in Toronto.
It's great. Parallels on Geary, and that's great as well. Anyways,
pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to meet you finally, and this was actually great.
It's been awesome.
What did we hit?
115.
115, yeah. So that's a testament there. So.
I'm not shocked. I can't stop talking, right? But no, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and looking forward to continuing.
Keep up the good work.
You too. Thanks, man.